Welcome to the William P. Duvall NSDAR workshop in partnership with the Central Florida Genealogical Society for researching family and preserving gravestones. My name is Karen Miles Miller. This evening, we hope to answer many questions such as, do you use Find a Grave? Have you ever come across a tombstone that you can't read? Do you know of gravestones that need to be cleaned? Does anyone have a veteran relation that needs a headstone or a service medallion? These questions and many others will be answered during this workshop. The workshop will be presented in 5 parts. Your presenters, who will be doing the info shuffle between presentations, are all members of the William P. Duvall NSDAR chapter and are as follows. Andrea Stein, how to find the location of your ancestor's grave. Andrea is currently co-chair of the American 250 Committee and is also the librarian for the local Duvall chapter, and has also been the recording secretary for our chapter. Andrea is a member of the Jamestown Society and is currently searching for a Mayflower ancestor. Michelle Mingoya, how to use Find a Grave. Michelle has been a Find a Grave volunteer since 2014 and has documented nearly 1,000 grave sites. She will show us how to use this valuable tool. Karen Miles Miller, that's me. How to easily read a gravestone. I am co-chair of the American 250 Committee with Andrea. We are promoting the honoring of our American Revolutionary Patriots in preparation for the year 2026, in which our country will celebrate its 250th birthday. I have also been the chair of the Community Classroom Committee for several years. Andrea Stein will also tell us how to order a free tombstone or medallion for your veteran ancestor. And Elaine Powell, how to properly and safely clean a tombstone. Elaine is our first vice regent of the Duvall chapter, and she is also the president of the Central Florida Genealogical Society. We are asking that you save all of your questions for the end of all 5 presentations, which will enable us to present all of our information. Since the handouts will have many links to websites, it's best if you receive a PDF that will share these links with you. Please leave your email with us at the sign-up sheet at the top of the stairs. We promise not to sell your emails to any annoying companies. We all hope that you will learn information that you can personally apply to your own situations. So without further ado, part 1 with Mrs. Andrea Stein.
Does everybody recognize the statue that I have on the screen? Everybody know who that is? The bird girl from Bonaventure and Savannah, that made famous by the book and the movie. And your ancestors may not be in such an exotic location as the Bonaventure and Savannah, but hopefully we'll be able to give you some tips on how to find them. And I'm going to start with what's easiest first. And I consider the Find a Grave to be really a good source if you're lucky enough to find your ancestor with a death record in there. The Find a Grave will be covered extensively by Michelle a little bit later. But my clue is that if you put your ancestor's name in with the birth year and death year and the state where they may have been buried, then you're more likely to find them. Because if your ancestor died in a location other than where they lived, then you won't find them. So that will be helpful for you to find the grave record. If you don't find it on Find a Grave, my next suggestion is Family Search. And this is the Mormon Church site, and they have tons of records that are accessed by you're setting up a, what am I trying to say? A sign-in with a password. All you have to do is a simple search to see if they have a record. Their records are all free, so it's really a good site to get to know. The next one everybody has heard about is called Ancestry.com, but it is a paid subscription. They will give you 2 weeks free access for you to build your tree and add what you know and take advantage of all of the records that they have available. If you decide after that 2 weeks that you don't want to continue, your tree will still be out there for you to add records to in the future. And you don't have to subscribe to do that, because I do that myself. The next site is called Interment. Now, government entities, churches, genealogy, and historical groups have donated records to this site. They have 25 million records having to do with burials. The last but not least, everybody knows Google. Now, when you put your ancestor's name in to do the search, you have to put it in quotes, and then you can add either the word obituary or cemetery or city or county that you think they might have been buried in. All of these sites are easily accessible on the internet. And if you weren't lucky enough to find your ancestor with them, we've got some more to suggest. They cause you to dig a little deeper. The first are called vital records, and those are the BMDs. And all genealogists know about the BMDs because they're birth, marriage, and death records. Now, death certificates didn't begin until the early 1900s, and they are created where the death occurred and not where the person lived, and that's very important to know. Now, they can also give you a clue to where they might be buried if you find a death certificate, and don't forget to check adjacent counties. If you can get a death certificate, it will often tell you where they're going to be buried, the cemetery name, and if there's not that information there, something having to do with the disposition of the body should be there. Were they cremated, lost at sea, or not recovered? The FamilySearch.org site is great because they have a lot of these records and they don't charge for them. But normally, if you want a birth, marriage, or death certificate and don't use FamilySearch, you have to pay for them. Another source is Social Security death records. And once again, these didn't start until 1935, so only if you're dealing with a death after that time would the Social Security have the record. Newspapers and obituaries. If you don't know the local newspapers where your ancestor lived, once again, FamilySearch.org is good in their wiki area. And local libraries, often in that area, will have microfilm newspapers in their collections. Our handouts are filled with website connections. So on the newspapers and obituaries, there are a lot of them. Some of them are paid and many of them are not. The census records. In 1850, the census began recording every family member's name, age, where born, and other details. And often, family members outside of the immediate family are listed as living with them. Mortality schedules. In 1850 to 1885, in the year before the census was taken, they kept track of the people who had died in that year. If you go to FamilySearch.org wiki, once again, and put mortality in, then they will bring up the mortality records. City directories. Now, why are these important? If your ancestor has been recorded in every year and suddenly they're not there any longer, that might give you a clue as to when they might have died. And FamilySearch has 1.4 billion city directories. Cemetery offices may have records, family plot information, and maps that show even unmarked grave sites. Funeral homes may still have the records, or they can direct you to where they're housed, which can be in libraries or historical societies in the area. More recently, they've also begun to print obituaries on their websites due to the cost prohibitive charges that are being made by the newspapers for a newspaper obituary. Whoops. City halls have departments often that oversee cemeteries in the area with maps of burial sites. Estate and probate records are a wealth of information, and they will tell you what the court has decided once someone has died. Whether they had a will or not, they will tell you the distribution of the estate to the heirs, creditors, and what the care of the dependents is to be. This process takes place whether there is a will or not, and in many instances, they are the only known source of relevant information, such as the decedent's date of death. They also have lots of other information about family members and where they lived, what their occupations were, and military service. Wills of family members are also very helpful. That's sort of self-explanatory. County libraries. You should learn the collections and resources that the county libraries have where your ancestors lived. County history books are great. Now, in the 1880s and 1890s, these were very popular, and the local families were able to write their own biographies and pay to have this information submitted. And they are really a wealth of information if you can find them. Historians and local societies, historical societies, are super helpful people. And I recommend that you become familiar with the people there. They also have sources of information that are not on the internet. And often they know the cemeteries and have burial information with books that are kept locally. State archives house documents or records relating to the activities or business dealings of a person, family, corporation, association, community, or the nation. Lastly, my recommendation is to visit. Go to where your ancestors lived and visit the libraries and historical societies, and if you have the address, go there also. People are super helpful when you go to these places, and will give you all kinds of information that you could never have gotten any other way. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
As Andrea mentioned, Find a Grave is a great tool for finding the burial location and even being able to see what it looks like if it doesn't happen to be nearby. The best thing about Find a Grave is it's free. The thing you have to watch out for is, number one, this information is all supplied by volunteers, like me. And we do our best to get the information in there properly and accurately, but it doesn't always happen that way, like any other kind of wiki. The other thing is, it's supplied by volunteers. So a volunteer may have been through your cemetery, your ancestor cemetery, and documented every grave they could find. Or It may be that no one has ever been there to take any pictures or collect any information. Let me kind of get an idea of you all and your experience with Find a Grave. Has anybody used it to try and find? Okay, lots of them, a few newbies. And then, is anybody here a contributor? In other words, you've put information in about maybe your ancestor. As part of the America's 250, we are trying very hard to encourage people, particularly for America's Patriots, to put information into Find a Grave about your patriot, whatever you know. And then finally, do we have any Find a Grave volunteers, people that like to hang out in the cemetery with me and just take pictures until they can't take pictures anymore? Just a few, okay. So if you go to the tool at findagrave.com and you know you have a person you're looking for, you can type their name in as much, it's a search, as much as information that you know. And I happen to know that my ancestor and patriot, Philip Short, died in New York State. You can put in the year he was born, the year he died, any information that you have, and simply do a search. Now, we've been looking at him earlier tonight, so he's coming up at the top of the list. But that doesn't always happen. You'll have a list you can look through, you can check out likely information. Of course, you can take a look at the memorial for this particular person, and you can see that there's information here that you may or may not already have in your family tree. His birth, his death, where he's buried, and the location, and also, in this case, there happens to be a photo of his gravestone. You can click and make it bigger or smaller, as the case may be. Then, below that, there's some information. Somebody has put in an article from 1933 about a family reunion that was held, and this person was discussed. In this particular case, there's a whole bunch of cool information out here. His parents are listed, which you may need in your research. His spouse, his siblings, his children, and then at the very end here, you can add a flower. And that means that you can go in there as a user and basically mark that you were there. And in fact, here's a note that this was one of my patriot ancestors. And you do that by simply clicking leave a flower. Now, if I came in here and there was no photo, or maybe I had a more recent one, or maybe I cleaned the gravestone and had a better one, I could add or request photos. This photo was added by a guy by the name of Ken Hutton. I've never met him. However, if you click here, you will go to his profile and you can send him a note and say, hey, Ken, I would like to use your photograph in my family tree. And Find a Grave does ask that if you're going to use information or photos out of the memorials, that you do get permission of the person who took the photo. You can also, if you know more about this person than is here, you can suggest edits. So you would click and you would have an opportunity to perhaps add more information. Maybe you've got the inscription in front of you and you want to type that out. As you can see, there's a spot here for GPS location. And the mother and father, the way the family gets in here is that the memorial number at the bottom is what you copy and paste from one person into the other relationship. You can also tell here the person that created this memorial back in 2010. So let me move over just to show you, if you have an ID and you have created a memorial, and this is one of the ones that I have done locally here, the information that you can put in or edit includes additional name information, gender, birth and death location. You can put as much bio information in there as you want. If you have a transcription of an obituary, whatever you would like, the location, the plot, the coordinates. You can transcribe the inscription. You can put in gravesite details. For example, if you have a military marker or a DAR marker, and here is where you would add the various memorial IDs for the family members. And you can save the changes and you're all set. So I hope this has been informative on the information that might be available. Most of the ancestry sorts of, the family tree sorts of resources do allow you to search the indices and get into Find a Grave. So if you go to Ancestry and you're doing a search, you will find a Grave indexes there, and you can get to these pages from that location. However, if you're not subscribing to one of those services and you just want to go in and look for a burial spot, you can do that here. I hope you do find your ancestor, get to visit their burial location, maybe take some more pictures, and leave a flower in person someday. Okay. I'll let you figure out where you're going next.
I'll start. Yeah.
On to Karen.
Walking through a graveyard or cemetery, and graveyards are the burials areas that are within a churchyard, you often see stones that are illegible, but there is a way to be able to read them. I call it the magical mirror trick. Let's watch the first 3 minutes of this video so that you can learn how to do this graveyard magic too. Then this magician will show you how she used a trick in the local cemetery here in Winter Park.
The first questions we got on the previous video was more or less the same, is can I use a flashlight instead of the mirror? Some of the folks' reasons were because they were by themselves, which is understandable, and some other folks said it would be easier to tote around a flashlight versus a large full-length mirror. All of these things I completely agree with, and these are good questions. So to answer that question, it's always going to be a matter of good, better, and best. You know, a candle is obviously light. It's not very much light, but it is light. A flashlight, it's all according to how many lux or lumens your flashlight possesses. So
I've been getting paid
you know,
$1,000.
Situation where a flashlight would certainly work in places. Renee, go ahead and throw the light on this one here. So this is an example of the mirror trick with a different stone to show you. Now take it away, please. So this one is in much worse shape than the ones I showed on the previous video. So with the mirror trick, there are several benefits to using a mirror over the flashlight, and we'll go into those now. So I'm not the possessor of a beautiful, strong flashlight, so I don't know which kind everyone has. But in this case here, this is a very poor-looking stone from the surface. It just has mottled effects all over it. It looks really bad. If I had a flashlight on this stone, I could illuminate maybe a small section of it. So a flashlight would be ideal for illuminating small sections of the stone. But as you can see here with the mirror trick, the entire stone is illuminated and not just a portion. The purpose for which I'm producing this video in a large degree is so that we can take photographs to document the names and the text on these stones before they completely go away. So with the mirror trick, you have the benefit of illuminating the entirety of the stone versus a small portion. But if you want to try the flashlight, and if it works for you, that's great. I just can't conceive of any flashlight being more bright out here today than the sun. It's extremely bright out here today, and it's free for the taking. But if you are on your own, that does present a problem. So this is...
So after seeing this, I had to try this magical mirror trick myself. Okay, yeah, okay, let's leave it there. So my wonderful, brilliant, handsome, and charming husband and I went to Piney Wood Cemetery off of Lakemont Drive. And as you can see, I'm a big fan of Wheel of Fortune. So to accomplish this task, I bought a mirror at Ross for $15, and it was 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, very lightweight. This trick also does require 2 people so that somebody can take the pictures, because somebody's got to hold the mirror. But it really works. Okay, this is the original stone before we use the mirror, and as you can see, it's barely legible. And using the mirror, voila, the name is now legible. And as you can see, we can see her birth and death date. And what was really interesting to me was I had no clue. I just picked this one out, and she's got my birthday, but she's a little older than I am. You can go to the next one. The mirror illuminated the text on the stone, which was originally basically illegible, but using the mirror, it was magical. If the stone is in the shade, you just need to position yourself so that the mirror is out in the sun, and you can do this from like 50 and 100 feet away, and play with the angle until it lights up the marker. I also tried using a flashlight that was on my phone, but it didn't work at all. It didn't even light up anything. I tried a handheld flashlight that I keep in my car for emergencies, and that too did nothing. So I recommend using the mirror. And never do a rubbing, which was a very popular thing to do a few years back because it actually damages the stone over time. So as you can see, this trick really works. My husband and I found it to be quite illuminating, and I hope that you do too.
Gotta go back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mine.
Good, yep, go back to you. Wait a minute.
Oh, and isn't he great on the video? He's got several that, and he'll show you how he stood 100 feet, or his partners stood 100 feet away, and then they kept doing the angle, and they illuminated this one that was under a tree.
Okay. Was your ancestor a veteran with military service or a Revolutionary War soldier? In addition to the sources we've already talked about, there are some that are specifically for veterans and soldiers. Thank you.
Next one?
That's it. It's on there, yeah. Military records are available at a site called Fold 3. Unfortunately, it's also a paid subscription, but they often offer, during particularly holidays around military events, they will offer access for free where you can go in and find records. Or they also offer a 7-day trial to check it out. And they have much more than just the military records. I'm not familiar with the site particularly, but I went in there to look, and there was a lot of other additional information. Military burial information. There are 2 government websites that have records that you can search for your veteran and their family members in veterans' national cemeteries, state veterans cemeteries, various other military and Department of Interior cemeteries, and for veterans buried in private cemeteries when the grave has been marked with a government grave marker, and they are listed on the handout. Pension records. Once again, Fold 3 has pension records for the military, and so does FamilySearch.org wiki. If your ancestor was buried in a civilian burial, they have collected information if they were awarded a tombstone or a marker from the Veterans Administration, but they don't have information for burials prior to 1997. Census records. From 1910 to 1950, they started asking about military service. In 1910, the census asked about the Civil War. In 1930, they included military service abbreviations. In 1940, they asked the men if they were veterans and the women whether their husbands had served. The most recent census in 1950 has questions about military service. These are examples of what the government will make available to you if your veteran qualifies for a tombstone, medallion, or a bronze marker. The first one I think everybody's familiar with. We see these upright stone headstones in military cemeteries. The one in the middle is the medallion, and then on the bright bottom corner is an example of a bronze marker. Now, I'll give you a quick overview of what is required in order to get these items, but our handout has much more extensive information. In the case of military documentation, you have to prove that your veteran was in active military service. You will find on Fold 3, the Ancestry, and other locations records that are generally accepted, such as muster cards or military documentation. And sometimes those are not sufficient. They consider those secondary, but they will evaluate what you send in on the application. To establish eligibility for a veteran of the Revolutionary War, documents are required which show that they did active federal service. Members of state militia are only eligible if their service was federalized and they were called to active service. Burial records are required. Proof of the burial or disposition of the veteran's remains are required. If the veteran's grave is not marked, documentation from the veteran's era confirming his final disposition of the remains must be provided. Contemporary records cannot be used for this purpose. To apply for a government-furnished headstone or marker, a completed VA Form 40-1330, which is called the Claim for Standard Government Headstone or Marker, accompanied by the required documentation of the veteran's honorable military service and burial records, must be submitted. Any person who served prior to World War I is not eligible for the medallion. In obtaining Veterans Form 40-1330, we've also given you the website, how to pull that form up, and the applications are worked in the order they're received. The processing time is dependent on the documents you submit and the work that's needed to verify all of the items. Once a marker is ordered, the standard lead time is 30 to 45 days for a bronze marker and 45 to 60 days for stone markers. In addition, we were talking about the America 250, and we're encouraging our members in the DAR to do what they can to get burial sites marked. They have an additional requirement for the DAR, which they have to get permission from the historian general to place, replace, or rededicate a DAR marker at the gravesite of their patriot. We have prepared a handout that's also directed to just the DAR members that want to go through this process so that they know everything that's required. The last little challenge has to do with women ancestors. Oops. This is not my computer, and I usually use a mouse. Is your ancestor a woman? We know they cause problems because they have maiden names and such as that. But there are things that you can find out what the maiden name was to help you find the burial record. First of all, a death certificate, and as you know already, that's only if they died after the early 1900s when they're available. Their children's records, when they applied for a marriage or a certificate or a license or a death certificate after 1900s, will normally have their mother's name and possibly the maiden name on there. Obituaries also are very helpful from newspapers or funeral homes for she and her family members. Divorce papers, these are stored in county courthouses where they were filed. Church records, once again, church records are very helpful if they were available at the time that they were living and are still available. Census records since 1850. Often you find the widows living with their married adult daughters normally. A mother or father-in-law can reveal the wife's maiden name. If the wife was remarried and has her new husband's name, her children still living at home will carry the original father's name. Does the wife's record indicate that she is widowed? If the mother is missing and there is a small child, it might have been the child she died with in childbirth. How old is that child? These are just some additional clues, and once again, there are lots of links on the handouts that we've done to help you with hopefully finding the burial site of your ancestor. Thank you.
Okay, I want to talk to you about how to properly and safely clean a tombstone, but we're going to watch a quick video first. It's a short one. All right, now hopefully this one. There's no sound.
My name is Alicia Williams, and I'm a
Here we
Gravestone conservator. Today, I'm going to show
Very
you how
good.
I clean.
Oh, the way out to the right,
Before I start a clean, I take the time to assess the gravestone, and I make sure that it's not wobbly or in any way deteriorating before I approach the clean. The next step would be to apply a product called D2 biological solution. It's been tested and shown to be safe and effective at removing all of the biological growth on the surface of a marker, and it doesn't cause any harm or leave behind any residual damage or effects like bleach wood or regular household soap. I soak the whole marker, and then I will allow that to dwell on the surface for a few minutes, and I will spray it down with a little water. D2 keeps working over time. That's how it's formulated. The warmer it is outside, the better it works. I personally find the fall is my favorite time to go clean because the D2 works throughout the winter. And so when you come back in March, April, it's just an entirely new piece. This particular marker had a significant amount of mossy growth on the surface of it. It was a very satisfying scrape for me. I am scraping the lichen and surface debris off of this stone before I begin the brushing process. Lichen is just like little mossy, flowery growths that kind of stick onto the surface. They're harmful over time. They will completely overtake the stone. The type of grime and dirt that's on a gravestone varies depending on where you're located and where the grave itself is. Is it under a tree? Is it in the shade? Is it on a hill? Like, does it get any sun? It's mostly different types of lichens and moss and just dirt and grass and things that get blown on it from mowing and caretaking efforts. I am using a regular bamboo skewer that you would buy at your local grocery store to make sure I get all of the debris out. Occasionally, I will pull those out to facilitate the cleaning process. The main type of brush that I use is called a Tampico brush. It is made with natural bristles, and as you scrub the stone, the bristles just get softer, so it really limits any abrasion to the surface of the marker. Some of the smaller ones that I use, the bristles will wear away instead of the stone itself, so I'll wear them down to almost nothing and throw them away. Generally speaking, if you wouldn't use the brush to wash your car, you don't want to use it on a gravestone. Anything harder than that is going to possibly risk harming the integrity of the stone or the inscription itself. I do not press hard. It's pretty gentle. If it's a newer, polished granite marker, you can be a little bit more aggressive with those because it's a stronger stone and typically they're modern and able to withstand a little bit more than the older ones. Once I feel like I've gotten the bulk of it off, then I give it a good rinse and let it dry. It's very important to keep water on the stone while you work because keeping the stone wet as you scrub limits any abrasion to the surface, and it also helps whatever is on there to come off a little bit more easy. I carry a lot of gallons of water with me. A low pressure sprayer, that's important because on historic stones, they're a softer stone, marble, sandstone, and they're very easily damaged by high pressure. So it's important to use a low pressure sprayer, like what you would use to spray fertilizer on your garden plants. The most important tip I have for someone who wants to get started in cleaning gravestones is to remember the main principle is to do no harm and to ask permission before you work in any cemetery. The excitement of watching that first stone come clean was the first time I felt like a real genuine smile come up on my face in a really long time. It just made me feel really good inside, like I had found a purpose.
Great.
Okay. All righty. So I have a tombstone cleaning kit that the first time I took one of my granddaughters, she wanted to go clean tombstones, and I just grabbed a few things, and we got to the cemetery, and I realized I didn't have everything I needed. So as we drove back home, I said, get your phone out and start adding these things. And as I drove home, I started telling her all the things to add. So I use a plastic milk carton. It doesn't hold everything, but it holds most of the items. And then as the woman said in the slide, the water sprayer is the most important thing. If you don't have a source of water at the cemetery, which most of the times in the bigger cemeteries you're not going to, you need to bring a lot of water. So as you saw, she had just a regular plastic, the 59-cent plastic paint scraper. Don't use the metal ones, use the plastic one. And then also the bamboo skewers. You can buy a package of a bunch of them at Publix or Walmart or wherever you shop. This is the D2 biological solution. I have never found it locally. I ordered mine online. I ordered a gallon. And then it came with, it was a buy to get, I bought the gallon and then it came with the small spray bottle. So this is the Tampico brush that she talked about. Absolutely don't ever use the plastic brush, the cheapy brush you can get at Walmart. It really will harm the tombstone. So just, if you go into Amazon, just put in Tampico brush and it'll come up. They're very inexpensive, $5 or $6. It's also important to bring weed and grass cutting tools and a trowel, because a lot of times at the cemetery, the tombstones, there's weeds that are growing up. Sometimes there'll be bushes that have come, even trees. I often go, I'm on the board of the Droddy Rouse Cemetery, so I go there a lot. It's like a mile from my house. And we've had full-grown trees we've had to take down where they're growing into the tombstone. So I bring all my tools. So, and the trowel is really important for the graves, the headstones that are flat to the ground, because a lot of times they sink down. So you might have to do some real digging around those. So these are some of the other items. I have a hard time once I get down, getting back up. So my kids got me this to do gardening, but it works great for cleaning tombstones, because you can flip it upside down and you can use it as a little seat, but then you can use it as a kneeling pad, and it helps you, you have the little side things to help you get back up. Whoops. And but if you don't need that, then you can just use a regular rubber kneeling pad. It's important to bring some paper towels, some gardening gloves, as say if you've got to do some gardening work there, and then bring trash bags, because I know when I go to the cemetery, people will leave glass vases that they've had flowers in, and just all kinds of trash. So bring a broom, a tombstone like this. You can see it started to sink, so you might want to use the bigger broom to sweep away, but then this short broom here has stronger bristles, so that's really good for cleaning the ones like that are flat to the ground. And some cemeteries, I know, isn't it Glenhaven, Norma, that all their stones are on the ground. So this is the cleaning, it showed in the video there. It's just amazing. I've done a lot of experimentation at Droddy Rouse, and one time I went and I just sprayed the D2. I didn't do anything else. Now, I didn't have the lichen or anything like that on it, but just wanted to see what would happen. And I came back like a month later, and I was absolutely amazed. It's because you don't always have the tools with you. If you're going to visit your ancestors in another state, you're not going to have a tombstone cleaning kit if you're going, on a vacation. So, but, you might be able to throw in a thing of D2. We always keep D2 at the cemetery. So ask the cemetery office if you're going, like I say, on vacation. They might have some D2 that they're willing to lend you. Now, it's fairly expensive. It's like $50 per gallon, but we provide it to people when we have our cemetery cleaning day at Droddy Rouse. So, okay, that's all I've got on that. Okay. So regarding the handouts, we had a lot of handouts. So I had a multiple page handout. Andrea had several pages. And most of them, most of them do not have, most of them have links. So it wouldn't have done any good to hand you a handout here, because you'd have to go home and type in, 47 characters. So if you've given your name and email to Leslie up at the top, then we're going to send you an email, and it's going to have a PDF attachment for all these handouts. So you'll just be able to go. Now, there's some duplication from what Andrea did and what I did, but she's got a lot more information than I had. So do we have any questions? Yes, Cheryl.
I'm just curious, the D2, when you said you sprayed it on and let it go.
Yes.
You didn't rinse it off, you just sprayed it on.
No, yes. But if you're able to, the best way is what she did. But if you're, like I say, if you're limited time or you're not able to do that, just spray it, because it will work on its own. I will say, I've never heard that where she said that it works better in the warm weather. I did not know that. So that's a new hint. So, Terry.
On cleaning, she talked about a lot of different techniques, but is there an order in which you should do them?
Yes. Well, yes. Now, she sprayed the D2 first. I usually spray a little bit of water first, because some, those stones are so dry, but. Oh, scraping, yes, scraping first, yeah, because otherwise you're not getting your spray, your D2 behind the lichen. So you scrape first and then do either the D2 or the water, and then you let it rest for a little while. And then you do the brush, but frequently use the water, because otherwise you're just brushing in the dirt, just use a lot of water. So, okay, Mary Ann,
In addition to the D2,
yes,
other than tombstones,
yeah,
it's real good around the house for mold on the side of the house.
D2?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Expensive cleaner, though. Yeah,
It works though for you.
Elaine,
yeah,
you need to repeat what she said because the
Okay.
people can't hear.
Right. okay, yes,
Excuse me, I've used a product called Wet and Forget,
yeah,
and on my family.
Right.
It's kind of like saying we spray it, just
yeah, wet and forget, it's not recommended. D2 is the only really one, and that's the one that they use at Arlington. I don't know, I can't speak to wet and forget, but,
I use it on my driveway and on the house.
Okay, right, yes, I do know for household, right, yeah. But D2 is just the one recommended for tombstones, right, yes. Any other questions?
I do have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
From cleaning, on the death certificate, I recently came across one, and under the word burial cremated, but it said removed.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay, that means that they were moved from that location. That happened to my ancestors. They were originally buried and the family had them moved, so removed to another cemetery. Right. Now, sometimes it'll happen, the reason mine was it had been owned by the city and then the city sold it and they weren't really taking care of it, so I guess my aunts, I mean, it was long before, it's back in the 1800s, my family for some reason moved them, so, yeah. Yeah.
What happened if they died in one place?
Right, yes,
The family
yes,
was in another city, maybe they were living with their
yes,
and died there, but they were
yes.
buried back in their own.
I have a great-granduncle who died actually here in Florida, and his sisters moved him to St. Louis. So, yeah, that happens. I mean, it happens more frequently than you would imagine. Yes. Okay. Ann?
I have a family homestead in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, and the property was sold off for commercial use.
Oh,
So all the 2 or 3 generations had been buried there.
yes.
And so they had to get a permit from the county, and they were removed to a local church cemetery. But there's
Right.
a record of that.
Yes, she's talking about when they reinter. I will say my ancestors are from St. Louis, and I think they have the worst record in the country of moving whole graveyards. I was once flying in to go home for a visit, and I looked down and I could see caskets right next to Highway 70. I was horrified. I found out that it was just an old cemetery and they just didn't care. And everybody found out about it, the citizens, and they were horrified and it was terrible. They all had to be reinterred somewhere else. So, but they did that more times than I care to admit. So, yeah, like I say, it happens more times than you would imagine. So, yeah. Mary Ann?
If you're looking for a memorial for a more recent veteran,
Yes.
you can use DD 214, their discharge paper.
Right, DD 214. That's right. That's
They got from the Department of Defense online, put in a form.
right.
They took a hiatus over COVID times like people, but I finally got one after 2 years.
Oh, well, I've been waiting 3 years. I requested, well, I have my father's DD 214, but I wanted his Naval Reserve record, but haven't gotten it yet, so, anyway. Okay, anybody else? Yes?
I have a question about the find a grave process. Somebody has created memorials for my parents and my little brother, and I understand about possibly taking over that.
Yes.
What is the commitment, like if you wanted to become a contributor, or if you want to volunteer to take pictures,
Yeah.
maybe just the cemeteries that you frequent?
You just sign up for an account and you can do that. You can,
Volunteer.
yeah, volunteer, right. Yeah, you can go in, you can click on, maybe it's a cemetery near where you live or where your family's buried. You can volunteer to take pictures for that cemetery. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just create an account and then you can do whatever you want.
It's a commitment based on what you have time to do.
Right, yes. And by the way, if it's your immediate family, the memorial, the person that created the memorial, they have to turn that over to you. They have to, yeah, if it's immediate, so, yeah. Okay, anybody else? Well, I would like to thank our presenters today. I want you to know we started working on this class, I think it was about a year ago. And believe it or not, coordinating with 4 speakers is much harder than I realized. But I congratulate them. I think it was all good. I hope you all learned a lot tonight. So I appreciate your coming out. Be sure if you did not put your name and email on the list, Leslie's up at the top, and do that, and we will be sending you an email with those. So thank you for attending.
Thank you, Elaine.
Oh, I forgot, wait a minute, hold on, forgot to show you one thing. Okay, so. This, I usually go to the cemetery by myself, and I don't have a mirror, so I bought this. And I take this, and you can put it to the side, and it will do, it really is amazing. You have to kind of play with it, and you angle it. And this is not a battery. This is one that is charged, with a wire. So it's nice, so I don't have to worry about batteries. So it's great. Just put in a long LED light on it. I got it on Amazon. I think it was like $18. So, yeah, it's great. It works for home stuff around the house, too. Yeah.
I want to add that you shouldn't go to the cemetery by yourself.
Oh,
I know that's not always possible, but it's not a good idea.
well, it's okay. It's like an hour, a mile from my house.
Old Key West Cemetery with my cousin, she said, I hope there's no vagrants here today, but there's a lot of whiskey bottles.
Oh, yeah.
They're finally, and a lot of cemeteries are locking the gates.
Well, yeah, well, mine's only 4 acres, and there's people right across the street that I know, so I know I have to bring my cell phone. So,
Just blind them if you touch it.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, weapon, yeah. All right, thank you again for attending.
Thanks for